So recently the media has run several stories on the Pocklington Chariot burial because an excellent shield was recovered from one of these chariot burials there. And it is in fairly superb condition and shows the high detail of Latin style art. But more important, I think, than this individual shield is the burials themselves and what they tell us about the people. Now, this area, this region, seems to have been inhabited by the Parisii. This was a Celtic tribe that seems to have originated in Gaul. There is another tribe with a very similar name that's known from Gaul, the Parisii. And so it seems very likely that at some point this particular tribe also established its own tribal identity in Britain. Archaeologists give the name of the Arras culture to this particular area because they are unique. And one of the unique features is that instead of having circular tumuli, they use square barrows for their elite burials, such as this particular chariot burial. Now, the other unique thing about this particular burial, first of all, it's called a shield burial because the body of the man was placed atop his shield when he was put to rest. The other interesting thing is that this chariot was buried with the horses, and the horses are positioned as such that they are described as, by the archaeologists who excavated them, appearing to leap out of the burial mound. And there is, of course, he was also buried with grave goods and so on, pork ribs and such, and it implies a kind of sense of immortality, that he is indeed traveling to another world, and that he needs to be suited up in his chariot, he needs his supplies, and he needs his horses to get there, or to assist him on the other side. Now, he was also buried with a sacrificed sword blade as well. And that means that the sword was taken and bent or broken in a ritualistic fashion. The killing of the sword, so that the sword spirit also travels along with him into the other world. So when the burial was done, I would assume that the animals themselves were killed. The horses were killed either after they were put in the hole or before, and then arranged. Now, it shows us several things, and that is that the Celts were primarily organized by tribes, and each tribe had their own individual set of cultural beliefs and their own individual set of specific religious beliefs. But this is not something unique or surprising, and it shouldn't surprise any of us, because this is also the case in the Greek world. It was the case in the Italian peninsula, where Rome was differentiated from all of its neighbors as a distinct independent culture, even though it was of the same linguistic group as its neighbors. However, we shouldn't think that the diversity was so immense, because as I discussed in a previous video, there were many different and overlapping conceptions of the afterlife. And so the way a particular tribe would approach the afterlife, of course, is going to be expressed slightly differently region to region. But in this case, it's argued by the archaeologists that this expresses a belief in the afterlife. And therefore people will think, well, then how does this fit in with the conception of the Celts' view of reincarnation, which is historically attested in surviving sources? And as I discussed elsewhere, this is because the heroes, the chiefs, very powerful, important, influential people who did very impressive things in their life, were not generally seen as reincarnating. Instead, they were seen as being deified. So they were entering into the other world as a kind of demigod figure. They were becoming gods themselves, as we see is customary with the Roman emperors. They are deified upon death. Now, this doesn't mean that they become some sort of overarching celestial deity. It's really much more in line with the Christian idea, perhaps, about what happens to one after death, where your soul enters heaven, right? Your soul is immortalized. This doesn't happen to most people in a pre-Christian context. What happens instead is that your soul is just like a part of matter, is just like a part of the energy of the world, which is recycled back into the world. And so you as in small you, not you the personality, not you the ego, but your soul, your essence, is recycled back into the world, and you become a plant, you become a tree, you become a bird, or whatever. Now, some people will say that you're only reincarnated back according to your family line or your specific species. That may be the case, that may not be the case, and we have evidence that goes both ways, I think. But it's certainly true that there was a conception of this sort of process taking place, but there was also the conception at the same time of people who transcended this cycle and attained deification, that became a saintly figure or became a kind of god, in that their soul is immortalized and they therefore enter the other world as an immortal being. And this is what is being expressed in these kind of burials. So yes, these are people that are transcending into the other world. They are entering into the afterlife. But this isn't thought to happen to most people. So this is what happens to the elite, and this is why they're awarded this very special burial practice. If you found this interesting, please like, share, subscribe, and check out the Patreon page to support the channel. Diolch yn fawr iawn am wrando, ac, fel bob amser, sefwch yn dal.